Yo, what it do, everybody? Your favorite anti-hero, back with another video. For those who don't know me, I am the Pepperoni, and here, I don't typically like to throw shade, but I do enjoy sprinkling pepper, because I care. Alright, let's just jump on in here. Today, I'm going to be doing another book review, and today, we're going to be doing The Dead Undone by Ellie Douglas. This book clocks in at 357 pages. It's a little on the longer side, but it does have really quick chapters. You zip right through the chapters. While I was reading this book, I found myself, I'd finish a chapter, I'd flip a few pages, be like, oh, this next chapter is only like 4 or 5 pages. I'll just go ahead and read it too. Now, just judging from what's written on the back, there's the last line that reads, "If you thought sleeping was safe, think again." And I'll be honest, with a line like that, I kind of thought this book was going to be childish. I thought it was going to be kind of like a Goosebumps book. Boy, was I wrong. This book is very gory. It's gore galore. It is just super duper gory. In fact, the book starts out actually in a really good way. The first chapter, it starts out, it sucks the readers in. It starts out with a character basically running through a swamp. Let's just say there's some monsters in this book, and those monsters get a hold of that person. And it doesn't end so well for that guy. But don't worry, he's not important. Now, in this story, it follows the life, or it follows the adventures of a character named Willa. Willa, at first, will seem like a typical, very small, kind of petite nurse, but you quickly learn that she's actually a kung fu master who also can box at a professional level. So that was unexpected, but it was very convenient for the situation that she finds herself in. I guess with a name like Dead Undone, you kind of get the idea it's a zombie kind of book, but it's not entirely what you would expect. There is a unique element to the zombies, to the monsters in the story. I'm not gonna spoil it here. Yeah, in this story, it basically follows the character Willa as she tries to be a nurse in an insane asylum on a secluded island off the mainland of New Zealand. And sadly, zombie character kind of creatures show up and start wreaking havoc. So that gives you an idea. Her and the other humans have to try and survive. As I mentioned, the story does have an insane asylum, and it is a functioning insane asylum. So it does have patients. The story takes place in the 80s, and it's really interesting getting to see the childish like insane people in the story, and the really interesting weird things they say and do. It's really cute, especially when hordes of zombies get a hold of them and rip them apart in the most violent way possible. Now, if you're somebody who, let's say specifically, are a fan of, I don't know, Michael Jackson, Pink Floyd, Blondie, Queen, Billy Joel, Irene Cara, Genesis, Pat Benatar. If you like these kinds of bands or artists, and you're looking for a character that you can really relate to, someone that really feels like someone who you could look up to, that you could enjoy having a conversation with, you're in luck. Now, aside from the music element, I don't really want to tell you too much about the main character's backstory, because I don't want to ruin anything for you. I'm just gonna leave that up to the author Ellie Douglas. I think that should be more her responsibility. I think if you want to know things about that character, then you'd have to read this book to figure those things out. And as a matter of fact, I'm not really going to tell you any real intricate, backstory kind of details about any of the characters in this book because I don't want to ruin it for you. If you want to learn those things, I'm sure you would understand that the best place to find such details would be in this book. But there is one character. There is one character that's really important. That I think it's so important that you know their backstory because it's so critical to this story. That I'll go ahead and I'll tell you about it right now. Actually, it's a character named Officer Lance. Officer Lance recently had some really hard times with his wife, which at this point, his ex-wife. You see, his wife actually turned lesbian, and she lives on the mainland, and so Lance, when he found out that his wife decided to be lesbian and left him for a woman named Claire, she's important. You need to know her name, Claire. Um, but not his ex-wife. She's not important. But Claire, she's important. You need to know her name. Lesbian Claire. When his wife left him for Claire on the mainland, he was really upset about that. You see, Lance felt that his manhood had been stolen from him, and he no longer was able to face his fellow officers. So, luckily for him, he was granted a transfer to the island in which the story takes place, which is Tui Island. And so he was able to move to the island where he met up with Officer Jim Watford. Luckily for him, Jim had a camper on his property, and he let Lance move into that camper. So Jim went ahead and took the camper down to the beach and permanently parked it there and allowed Lance to live in it with his dog. You quickly learn that he's actually been there for 5 months, and he's just really trying to pick up the pieces from where his failed relationship just crumbled. It's important that you keep that in mind because if you don't know that, this story's not really going to make much sense. You're going to be kind of lost on some things, so you definitely got to keep that in mind. And it's easy to skip over that detail, but you can't do that. Like I said, you'll ruin the story. Now, on that note, this is a arcade book, so if you are a token collector, you're definitely going to want to add this to your collection. Just in case, you might have forgotten already, I just want to remind you that there are monsters in this book, and they're basically like zombies. There's a really unique element to them, though, and it's really important that you understand that there is something unique about them, and I just wanted to bring that back up again. Now, early on in the story, as you start reading, it can be a little jarring at first, but it's actually really neat. It's really cool. You've got this little crisis happening with these zombie kind of creatures. They're taking over this island, obviously, and so you get this back and forth kind of effect where one chapter follows one group of people, the next chapter follows another group of people, the next chapter follows another group of people, and so on. And you get this back and forth of all these different subgroups, and you get to see how they're experiencing this traumatic incident. It's like I said, it's kind of jarring, but it's really neat. It's pretty cool. It gives you a full spectrum view of what's happening. So it really makes this feel a little more unique in that element. So that's cool. But then halfway into the story, all those factions they meet up, and then it just becomes like a normal story. This story is just really great at variety. Okay, like I said, the main character is a girl named Willa. But you'll also get to follow characters like Travis. You get to follow Travis, and you'll get to follow Tommy and Shane and Jasper. You get to follow Jasper and Vera and Dr. Hamilton and Mark and Joseph Pringle and Angela and David and Joe and Marion and Lisa and Charles Pike and Susie and Billy and Bill Dawson, different character, and Pauline. You also get to follow Dr. Phillips, sometimes called Dr. Philip Baxter. His name changes, but it's the same guy. You get to follow characters like Frank Bose and a sheepdog named the Bandit. You also get to follow Jonathan and Beatrice, and of course Officer Jim Watford and Officer Lance Hawthorne, and of course the classic Wiremew Barnes doll. Yeah, you get a good cast. Oh, wait, that's only in the first 50 pages. You also, as you keep reading, you also get to learn about characters like Dr. Tony Adams and Jerry Finley and Timothy Reed and Karen and a dead dog named Buster. And of course, there's Jesse and Carl and Lenny and Mitchell and Paula, not to be confused with Pauline. And of course, Jax, can't forget Jax. There's also Tony, not to be confused with Dr. Tony Adams. Now, this is a patient named Tony. There's also Tom and Rob and Liz Banks. There's also Susan, not to be confused with Susie. There's also Jordan and Solomon Pickering. And of course, Lucy. Oh, can't forget Lucy. Then there's Ben Summers and Deborah Knotts and Dr. Lime. And of course, Pip Sadler and Dr. William Bones. And of course, Richard. Yeah, there's actually quite a few characters in here. But that was just the first 100 pages. If you keep going, there's even more. You get some more important characters, like Maria Frost, and of course, Beefy Mac, sometimes called Big Mac, sometimes just called Mac, and Steve, and Liam, and Matilda. Yes, Matilda. And Amanda. Yeah, she's in here. And Gay Paul, he's in here. Not to be confused with Paula. Not to be confused with Pauline. And Todd, he's in here. There's also Sean. Can't forget Sean. Sean's in here. Then there's also Ray, the dentist. And Marcus. And Kathy. And Kane. Kane's in here. And then, of course, there's Draco, the Alaskan dog. And then I mentioned earlier lesbian Claire. And then Sally. Sally's in here. And there's Neil. Neil the gardener. Yeah. And then there's also another dead dog. This one's name is Chip. And then there's also Neville Sorensen. He's in here. There's tons of good characters. Oh, and there's also Chung Hoon. He's in here. And Bart Valley. And Shirley. And Millie. And Andrew. And Craig. And Stan, the alcoholic. He's in here. Kevin Staples. He's in this book. And there's also Laura. Laura's in here. And of course there's Joel. Can't forget Joel. And also Professor Jordan Nitty. Not to be confused with the patient named Jordan. This is a different Jordan. But there's really just one character that really upset me. Sucks. In the story, you get to hear about Fred the imaginary goldfish, but you don't really get to see much of him. And yes, all those characters are equally as important as each other. Now, some people would say that having that many characters is stupid, but not me. You see, I think having that many characters in your story, it well, it really adds character. But truth be told, there is one character who is mentioned in this book many times, and yet this individual never actually appears in here. It's really interesting. His name pops up all the time, and yet he never shows up. And that is our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. In fact, Jesus' name is mentioned in here 28 times. Whether it's someone starting a sentence with Jesus, Jesus Christ, Christ, or even Jesus fucking Christ. Everybody starts their sentences that way. Now, as I mentioned, this story is on a secluded island where a type of zombie crisis kind of thing happens. And I just want to stress, in case you might have already forgot, there is a very unique element to these zombies. It's important that you don't forget that. They're very unique. But as those unique zombies attack, it forces the people, of course, to hide in the insane asylum, which is haunted. It's a haunted insane asylum. There's ghosts in the insane asylum. It might make you wonder who's the villain. What's the antagonist force in this? Is it the ghosts? Is it the zombie things outside with the unique element? Or is it something else? Because, see, as the story goes on, you find out that amongst all that chaos, turns out that somebody, a survivor, is secretly working with the zombies. But it's not really that important. Once they figure it out, they're just like, meh, water under the bridge, man. I mean, dozens of people are dead now, but shit happens. All is forgiven. Maybe that's why they were mentioning Jesus so much. They're very forgiving. So good on them. There's also an evil snake lady. She's very serpent-like. She slithers a lot. She's very venomous. She's quite the viper, if I do say so myself. Very snake-like. She slithers. Yeah. Now, as you read this story, it will get kind of overwhelming. As the gore and everything, it just kind of turns into just this big slash and bash for several chapters of just constant gore and blood and body parts. And some people might get lost in that. Some people might think, what the fuck is going on? But you just got to keep on reading. If you love gore and monsters, and you just want to read about violence for nearly 400 pages, I know of a wonderful book by Ellie Douglas. There's also a really cute scene in this book where people get to skate around on roller skates. After mentioning everything that I've mentioned so far, including the fact that these zombies have a very unique element to them that I don't want you to forget. I want to make sure I remind you that these monsters are very unique. Don't forget it. But yeah, amongst all this, the zombie monsters and the haunted insane asylum and all this fighting and violence and this game of survival. Um, most people probably wouldn't assume that there's a very graphic sexual scene in a book such as this. But if you're one of the special few who do think you would find something like that in this book, well, you're in luck. Because if you go to Amazon.com right now and you purchase The Dead Undone by Ellie Douglas, and you get this beautiful paperback copy, or you get the ebook version for yourself, you could read this book and find out if such a scene is in this book. Bye.